Welcome to JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. If this is your first time checking out a video, please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. We're watching a clip of The Herd with Colin Cowherd talking about the Dallas Cowboys. And, what the heck are they doing this offseason so far? All these other teams, really pretty much every team, is making legitimate, concrete moves to genuinely or significantly make themselves better. Even the Kansas City Chiefs, the team who won the Super Bowl, back-to-back Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce, they're even making moves to get better. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys who got walloped, absolutely embarrassed against the Green Bay Packers at home in the playoffs in the wild card round, and they're just like doing nothing. And it's crazy. It's really genuinely crazy. And apparently, I guess Cowboys fans are really upset. You know, the fans themselves are really upset. And I guess apparently the Cowboys are aware of that situation. And it's like, okay, what does that exactly mean? So let's take a listen, and we can break it down from here.
The Cowboys are a great brand, but they feel like a corner store. They love their draft picks. They draft them and pay them.
Cornerstone.
And it's so weird to me. They don't make any real moves. They lose Tyron Smith, who when he started was good. Tony Pollard was a 2, but he was something. And Michael Gallup, who has moments and knows the system. They're all gone. Now they're going to be reliant on the draft, which is a good wide receiver draft. But the offense, now there's clear lines that Dak needs a run game to win. He just does. Yep. The numbers are stark. If he gets 100-plus rush yards in support, he wins. Under, he doesn't. Yep. 150, he almost always wins. So I look at it and I think to myself, they're just not that. I mean, in the NFC, where you have these teams that were good last year but could potentially be great, Green Bay's rising. Minnesota's now stacked for Darnold. San Francisco Rams are getting better. And I look at Dallas and I think, what are they? I mean, they lose 3 offensive guys, Van Der Esch, no money, up against the cap. What are they?
I think sometimes we make this mistake too, right? Like the inactivity in free agency, usually it's teams that draft well that have guys to pay. And that's sort of where Dallas is right now. I think to some degree they're being held hostage by the fact that they know they've got 3 really big contracts coming down the pike. One's, of course, Dak. Another one is CeeDee Lamb, who's going into a contract year. And then, oh, by the way, Micah Parsons could cost you more than the Niners paid Nick Bosa. You could wait a year, but is he going to be amenable to that, right? So you could have 3 massive contracts coming down the pike. And I think that always was going to prevent them from being big players in free agency. The one thing I would look at here, they've always done a good job drafting offensive linemen. They've generally done a good job drafting running backs.
Yeah.
So I think you can take care of that. And the other thing is, and I think I brought this up to you last week, they've been creative on the back end of the offseason. Before last year, they went out and got Stephon Gilmore, I believe, right before the draft or during the draft. And I could see them taking a creative swing like that before. So I think the first day of free agency was always going to be sort of a non-starter for them because of the situation with Prescott, because of the situation with Lamb, because of the situation with Parsons. And again, I would trust them to get the lineman right. I would trust them to be able to find a running back, and I wouldn't rule out a creative swing coming.
Monday morning quarterback, Albert Breer. Good seeing.
Well, what is this? So he's talked about this creative swing, I think, last week, Albert Breer. What is it? If any of you guys know, please let me know in the comments below. I've been trying to think about it, like what are the possibilities? And granted, it's a little bit harder to guess because football has it's a little bit different than say basketball, when you can kind of know when players are on the move, and what the possibilities are. Football, a lot of times you see some of these moves and you're just like, whoa, wait, what? And so I'm just curious, what moves are there? Because I don't know. And right, and this is what we talked about before. We've been talking about this really ever since the season ended for the Cowboys, is what do the Cowboys do right now? Because they're going to have to pay Dak, Micah, CeeDee Lamb, and you have to pay them top dollar, a ton of money. And the Cowboys are living in a world, and this is what I keep saying, and I'm going to keep saying it because it's just relevant. It makes the most sense to me. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes taking a discount, restructuring his deal to clear up cap space so they can get better players and build a better team, and they win. And you, the Cowboys, expect to pay Dak Prescott more money than Patrick Mahomes, not play as good as Patrick Mahomes, but then somehow win like he is Patrick Mahomes. That doesn't make sense. That's not how it works. A big reason why Tom Brady is Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, is because of the coaches and the players and the environment, as well as their pure, amazing talent. Okay? They think that Dak Prescott is either somehow that talent and can just transcend all of those other things, do things that Patrick Mahomes and, Tom Brady, the best quarterbacks ever, aren't even necessarily doing. Or you're saying, well, we gave the weapons, we built the team around Dak and and gave him the coaches, but then you still didn't win. So again, which is it? Did you give Dak enough weapons and a good enough team, a good enough defense and good enough offense? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then Dak is not good enough. Okay? If the answer is no, well, then Dak can't take max dollar. Dak can't take, I always say max dollar, and someone called me out before for saying max. I just use those words, max. I know it's not like basketball max contract, but I mean like the maximum amount of money that, the individual can essentially get. So that's the way it is. So again, which is it? If Dak is good enough and you think that you built a good enough team around him, then they should win. Okay? And if not, then Dak can't take all that money. You need to get more players. He needs to restructure his deal or whatever he needs to do to clear up cap space. So then they can afford a Saquon Barkley and, Hollywood Brown or someone, they could have done that. They could have made moves to do that. Okay. But they didn't. And it doesn't have to be those exact moves. I'm just using those as examples. So this idea that they're just going to be able to rebuild in the draft, it can get a little difficult because you now are having, and this is the way how the Cowboys have kind of been now, you're now mixing, and you always have a mix of like youth and veterans and old heads, right? But the problem is that you're now going to maybe bring in some youth in important positions while these other players are a little bit more established. So you may have kind of like instant, you may be like in the playoffs and in these high pressure situations with players that have not been there yet. And now you have this like imbalance of experience, which I think can get you in trouble. We saw this with Detroit. They did not have the experience. Jared Goff was very calm, cool, and collected, was ready to go in that offense. I mean, he pretty much made like minimal mistakes. But he had a couple young guys on that team, and understandably so. This was like the high pressure situation. And I blame Dan Campbell for putting those players in that situation to be like, dude, this is the biggest moments of their lives, and you're going for it on fourth down. Like, put these players in a position to succeed. You're putting a tremendous amount of pressure on these guys right now. Like, you got to be smart here. Andy Reid is kicking field goals. Maybe it's good, and he has Patrick Mahomes. Maybe it's good enough for you. And again, that's why even Brock Purdy was able to be so successful with the 49ers, because he was surrounded by veterans, seasoned vets, people who already had Super Bowl experience. They've been there before. That really, 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 really helps. Whether you think Brock Purdy's the most amazing quarterback ever or the worst quarterback ever, it doesn't matter. My point still stands, okay? So this, though, is you're now having a mix of players who have not had that success yet. They have never even made an NFC Championship game. In fact, at this point, they all have to strongly doubt themselves. I don't know if you're Dak Prescott, how you feel confident ever going into the playoffs right now. And now if you're relying on some rookies who have never been there before to really step up and get you over the hump, You understand what I'm saying? You're relying on rookies to get you over the hump. I'm not seeing that. I'm sure there's examples, right? You could say, well, hey, Dak was a rookie and he played great, and Zeke was a rookie and he played great. And again, the expectations were different at that point. The expectations now are, what the heck are you doing? You either get to the Super Bowl or at least win the Super Bowl. I just don't know, and I've said this a lot now too as well. If you're a Cowboys fan, I really need to hear this. I want to know. I genuinely don't know. What are your expectations of your team? What would make you happy? Would you genuinely be happy if the Cowboys just made an NFC championship? Would you be like, finally, we made an NFC championship game for the first time in like 30 years or whatever the number is? Would you be happy about that? Or would you be like, yeah, that's great, but we have Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb. We're supposed to be winning. I want to get to the Super Bowl. And would you be happy with making just the Super Bowl? What if you made the Super Bowl, but then you lost? Would you be okay? I mean, maybe if you lost to Patrick Mahomes, it would be like, okay, you just lost to, potentially the GOAT. What are you going to do? It's a lot easier to swallow than maybe if you lost to the Ravens or the Texans or, some other random team. But I just don't know what would make you happy in that regard. Because your team has had such little success for literal decades. These last few years, you were supposed to be going to the NFC Championship games. You were supposed to be getting to the Super Bowl, and you didn't even come close to it. Now, I could see if you made it to the NFC Championship game a few years ago, right? The first year of your little run of 12 plus games or whatever. Then I could make the argument that, well, you know what? If they get to the NFC Championship again or get to the Super Bowl, yeah, you're a little bummed, but you know what? They've been a great team for the last few years. They've had great success. Kind of like the 49ers. I understand the 49ers have to be a little frustrated losing 2 Super Bowls since 2019, but they've been so competitive. They've been to NFC Championship games, multiple Super Bowls. They lost again to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. There's only so much you can do about it. And again, I would be bummed if I was a true 49ers fan, but I would still be like, hey, man, we've been one of the best teams in the NFL for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. I'm happy with that. I want to win, obviously, and I want to get better, but, I can't win the Super Bowl every year. It's obviously brutally hard. But now with the Cowboys, since they haven't reached any of those levels, it's all built up now. It just keeps building, and the pressure builds, where is a Super Bowl appearance good enough? Is an NFC Championship appearance good enough? I don't think it is, personally. I really don't. I don't see how you could be satisfied with that at this point, because you're too deep into Dak's career where just an appearance is okay. If this was 4 or 5 years ago, then sure, just an appearance makes sense. And if now you've appeared multiple times, you can be like, hey, we're really good. It's tough out there. I get it. I respect it. But having just like one random appearance, that's not good enough. It's just not the way I look at it. But if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan and you think differently, I really want to hear your thoughts, because I genuinely would love for you to educate me on just the general consensus of what the heck do you expect and want out of the Cowboys, outside the obvious of, just winning 4 Super Bowls in a row. But let me know in the comments below. Those are just my opinions. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I read every single comment. So let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.